Sophia Monroe was known in our social circles for her unwavering devotion. For me, she had turned down the advances of countless eligible bachelors, claiming she only wanted to grow old by my side. But during my proposal ceremony, her one that got away asked a single question: if I crash this wedding, would you leave with me? She answered without hesitation, yes. The moment the word left her lips, the air in the banquet hall seemed to freeze. I was kneeling on one knee, the custom diamond ring in my hand refracting cold, blinding light under the crystal chandeliers. The gazes of the guests felt like 1,000 needles pricking my skin. My name is Nathan Rivers, a somewhat renowned architect. Today was supposed to be the culmination of 3 months of meticulous planning. Sophia, my girlfriend of 5 years, we had gone from college sweethearts to successful professionals together. I thought the only thing missing between us was this ceremony, this title. I had poured everything into this proposal, booking the city's top riverside restaurant, inviting all our friends and family, wanting to give her the grandest romantic gesture. I could recite every word of the vows I was about to make. But now, the appearance of an uninvited guest and a single, breezy question had pulverized all my efforts and dignity. I knew the man, Damien Ashford, the second son of the Ashford family dynasty in New York, and the childhood neighbor Sophia claimed she had long since gotten over. He stood leaning against the doorway in a flashy white suit, a cynical smile on his face, looking like he was here for a fun party rather than to destroy a life. And Sophia, the look in her eyes after he spoke was something I had never seen before. It was a mix of excitement, grievance, and reckless abandon. She didn't even glance at me again. She hiked up the hem of her gown and walked, step by firm step, toward Damien. Every step felt like she was stomping on my heart. The guests began to whisper, a web of sympathy, mockery, and amusement trapping me in place. My throat felt blocked with cement. Sophia reached Damien. He shot me a look of triumph and provocation, took her hand, and turned to leave. Sophia. I finally found my voice, hoarse and unrecognizable. 5 years. What about our 5 years together? She looked back, a trace of apology on her face, but mostly a sense of relief. Nathan, I'm sorry. I thought I could forget him. I thought I could settle for an ordinary life. But the moment he appeared, I knew I couldn't lie to myself. Love isn't something you can settle for. Love isn't something to settle for. So, our 5 years were just settling. Watching the undisguised adoration in her eyes for Damien, the last shred of hope in my heart shattered. The taste of blood rose in my throat. I could barely stand. Nathan, don't waste your breath on her. She's not worth it. A hand gripped my arm firmly. It was my best friend since childhood, Marcus Blake. His face was flushed with rage as he pointed at the retreating figures and roared, Sophia Monroe, Damien Ashford, you two pieces of trash better remember this. For the humiliation you caused my brother today, I, Marcus Blake, swear I will make you pay tenfold. Damien glanced back and sneered. The Blake kid. Big talk. Too bad. What are you going to pay me back with, that sister of yours who's about to be kicked off the board? He didn't spare us another look, wrapping his arm around Sophia and strutting away amidst the complex gazes of the crowd. The restaurant was left with nothing but awkward silence and me, the biggest joke in the city. I felt my world collapse. The party broke up in shambles. Like a marionette with cut strings, I was dragged back to my apartment by Marcus. Clang. A case of beer hit the coffee table hard. Drink. We're not sleeping until we're wasted. A woman like that isn't worth it. Marcus cracked open 2 bottles and shoved one into my hand. I didn't take it. I just stared blankly at the photo of Sophia and me on the wall. She was smiling like a flower, leaning into my embrace, looking so sweet, so happy. Irony. It was cosmic irony. In what way am I not as good as Damien Ashford? I muttered, asking Marcus, asking myself. You're better than him in every way. That woman is blind. Marcus took a massive swig of beer, fuming. Damien is just a playboy relying on his family's dirty money. Everyone in the circle knows how messy his private life is. Sophia will regret leaving with him sooner or later. Regret. I gave a miserable laugh. She was probably immersing herself in the joy of reuniting with her true love. Why would she regret anything? What was the point of my sacrifice for 5 years? For her, I turned down an offer from a top design firm in Europe. I worked myself to the bone just to give her a home here in New York. I planned her into every blueprint of my future. And in the end, all I get is, I can't settle. My emotions finally broke. I grabbed the bottle from the table and chugged it. The cold liquid burned my throat, but couldn't extinguish the fire in my heart, a fire of anger, unwillingness, and the shame of being played for a fool. Marcus drank with me, bottle after bottle, cursing the whole time. He cursed Sophia's heartlessness, Damien's shamelessness. By midnight, we were both trashed. Marcus suddenly grabbed my shoulder, his eyes bloodshot, whether from rage or alcohol, I couldn't tell. Nathan, do you want revenge? Do you want to make them regret this until their guts rot? I looked at him through a drunken haze. Revenge? How? I'm a joke now. The Ashford family rules this city. How can we fight them? Ashford Enterprises was a titan of industry, real estate, finance, tech. I was just a moderately successful architect. In front of them, I was an ant. You can't fight them alone, but we can. There was a frantic ruthlessness in Marcus's voice. We. Yes, us. Marcus leaned in, lowering his voice, emphasizing every word. Damien mocked my sister for being on the verge of getting kicked off the board. Right. It's true. She's in trouble. The old fossils in the company are colluding with Ashford Enterprises to oust her from the CEO position, forcing her into a strategic marriage. And the partner Ashford Enterprises proposed is that bastard Damien. My head buzzed, and I sobered up halfway. You mean? My sister needs a husband, a legitimate husband to stabilize her position and shut those old men up. And you, Nathan. Marcus stared dead into my eyes. You need a platform. A platform high enough to let you stand in front of Damien Ashford and crush him under your boot. My heart rate spiked. An absurd, crazy idea arose in my mind. Are you suggesting? Exactly. Marcus nodded vigorously, flames dancing in his eyes. Nathan, forget that traitorous woman. Marry my sister. Be my brother-in-law. The proposal was shocking. I froze for a full 30 seconds before finding my voice. Are you insane? That's your sister. Marriage isn't a game. Marcus's sister, Isabella Blake. I had seen that name countless times in the financial news. The helm of Blake Holdings, a businesswoman known for her iron fist and intellect, dubbed the Ice Queen. She was 3 years older than me and stood at the very top of the social pyramid. Me marrying her, that was more ridiculous than running for president. I'm not crazy. I'm very sober. Marcus shook his head, the drunkenness fading from his eyes. Nathan, do you think I'm joking? My sister is surrounded by enemies. The board is using her single status and lack of an heir to question her stability and dilute her shares. The Ashford marriage proposal is poison. If she refuses, they have an excuse to attack. She needs a contract marriage partner, someone with a clean background, capability, and absolute trustworthiness. He looked at me with intense seriousness. In all of New York, I can't think of a second person besides you. Why me? I have nothing, and I just became the city's laughingstock. I mocked myself. Because I trust your character. Because you're smart and talented. And because right now you hate Damien Ashford as much as I do. Marcus grit his teeth. This is a transaction, and it's also revenge. My sister helps you ascend. You help my sister survive the crisis. Only by joining forces can we completely destroy that pair of scumbags, Damien and Sophia. Revenge. The word was like a poison dagger, stabbing precisely into the most painful part of my heart. In my mind, the scene of the proposal played on a loop, Sophia's retreating back, Damien's mocking laughter, the pitying looks of the guests. The shame, the unwillingness, it gnawed at my sanity like a viper. Why? Why did 5 years of genuine devotion earn me such betrayal and humiliation? Why did they get to leave in a glorious embrace while I was left alone to lick my wounds? I didn't want to be the pathetic victim anymore. I wanted them to pay. I wanted them to know that Nathan Rivers was not a doormat they could trample on. A ruthlessness I had never felt before rose from the bottom of my heart. I looked at Marcus, the confusion and pain in my eyes gradually replaced by cold determination. Fine, I squeezed the word out through my teeth. I'll do it. I'll meet your sister. The next afternoon, arranged by Marcus, I met Isabella Blake. The meeting place was the CEO's office on the top floor of the Blake Holdings Tower. Outside the massive floor-to-ceiling windows lay the most prosperous financial district of New York City. The skyscrapers were spread out beneath us. Isabella sat behind a wide ebony desk, wearing a tailored white suit, her long hair pulled back sharply. Her temperament was cold, her gaze piercing. She had even more presence than in her photos, an oppressive aura of someone accustomed to power that made it hard to look her in the eye. "Mr. Rivers, please sit." She gestured, her voice carrying the same detached chill as her demeanor. Marcus gave a brief introduction and then tactfully withdrew, closing the door. In the vast office, it was just me and her. The atmosphere was oppressive. I took a deep breath to break the silence. "Ms. Blake, I assume Marcus has explained the situation." Isabella nodded slightly, her gaze lingering on me for a moment as if appraising a commodity. "Yes. He said you need a wife, and I need a husband. We each take what we need." Her directness surprised me. "The terms of the agreement are simple." She slid a document toward me. "The marriage lasts for 1 year. During this year, you're my legal husband. You must cooperate with me to attend all necessary business and family functions and play the role of the Blake son-in-law. In return, Blake Holdings will establish an independent design studio for you, inject $5 million in startup capital, and all the group's real estate projects will prioritize your studio. $5 million in capital, priority on all Blake real estate projects. These conditions were a temptation that could skyrocket any architect's career. I only had to nod, and I would possess things I might not have achieved in 10 years of struggle. All I had to pay was 1 year of marriage. "Of course, this is strictly a cooperative relationship," Isabella added. "We will not interfere in each other's private lives. After the agreement expires, we will divorce amicably, and I will give you a generous severance package. Regarding assets, a prenuptial agreement has already been drafted. You have no objections?" "None." I shook my head. I wasn't after her money. I was after the qualification to stand in the same ring as Damian Ashford and fight. "I have only one question," I said, looking at her seriously. "Why did you agree to Marcus's absurd proposal?" "Just because I'm his friend." Hearing this, Isabella looked up and met my eyes properly for the first time. Her gaze was deep, like an ancient well betraying no emotion. "Marcus's recommendation is one factor. He says you're reliable, and I trust his judgment." She paused, her tone remaining flat. "On the other hand, I watched the video of your proposal. My heart sank. That farce made you the city's joke, but it also showed me your value," she said faintly. "Faced with such betrayal and humiliation, you didn't lose your composure. You didn't become hysterical. You just stood there quietly. In your eyes, there was pain, unwillingness, but no servility. A man who can maintain his dignity at rock bottom either has great depths or a spine of steel. Either way, it fits my requirements." So the pathetic state I thought I was in had become unique value in her eyes. The feeling was strange. Most importantly, the corner of Isabella's mouth hooked into a barely perceptible arc. "Our enemy is the same person, Damian Ashford and the Ashford family behind him. The enemy of my enemy is my friend." "Correct." "Correct." I looked at her, this calm, rational, even somewhat cold woman. I saw no emotion in her, only clear goals and precise calculations. Collaboration was perhaps my best choice right now. "I agree." I picked up the pen and signed my name on the agreement, Nathan Rivers. The moment the pen lifted, I seemed to hear the sound of my past life crashing down, and a new world full of unknowns and challenges was opening its doors to me. Isabella and I moved with startling speed. The day after signing the agreement, we went to City Hall to get our marriage license. Holding the document felt surreal. 2 days ago, I was preparing to propose to another woman. 2 days later, I was the legal husband of a woman I had met only once. Life is truly absurd. "From today on, you move into my house," Isabella said to me as we left City Hall, her tone an unquestionable command. "If we're going to put on a show, we have to do it right." The news of our marriage will leak soon. People will definitely be watching us. I nodded, understanding. Isabella's home was in the city's most exclusive enclave, a sprawling penthouse on Central Park West. It was massive, with a terrace overlooking the park. The interior was understated luxury, filled with art, revealing the owner's impeccable taste. A middle-aged housekeeper greeted us, respectfully addressing me as Mr. Rivers. Isabella pointed to a bedroom on the second floor. That is your room, separated from mine by the study. You can ask Mrs. Harper about household matters. With that, she took a call and hurriedly walked into the study, seemingly having endless business to handle. I stood in the empty living room, looking at this strange, luxurious environment, my feelings mixed. Was this the new life I had exchanged a marriage contract for? That evening, Isabella's assistant delivered a pile of items, clothes, shoes, watches, accessories, all top-tier luxury brands, filling my new room. Ms. Blake says that from now on, your image represents the face of the Blake family, the assistant explained formulaically. I looked at the luxury goods worth enough to buy my entire old apartment and felt no joy, only immense pressure. It was a constant reminder of the vast difference between Isabella and me. We were simply employer and employee. That night, Marcus called, his voice full of excitement. "Buddy, you're awesome. You're officially my brother-in-law." "How is it?" "My sister, the Ice Queen, she's hard to get along with, right?" "It's fine," I replied concisely. "Ah, I knew it. By the way, good news. I've already accidentally leaked the news of your marriage. The circle is blowing up. It'll probably be the headline tomorrow." Marcus fussed. I frowned. "Why so fast?" "Of course we have to be fast. Catch them off guard." Marcus's tone held a vindictive pleasure. "I really want to see the looks on Damien and Sophia's faces when they hear this." I hung up the phone, but I didn't share Marcus's excitement. I walked to the terrace and lit a cigarette, watching the city lights below. I felt a sense of blankness. The curtain had risen on this revenge drama. But was I really ready? Early the next morning, the news of my marriage to Isabella indeed detonated across New York's financial and social scenes. From failed proposal to marrying into billions, Nathan Rivers's real-life comeback. Ice Queen weds unknown architect, what's Blake Holdings' endgame? The headlines of every major news site were dominated by us. My phone was practically blowing up, friends calling for confirmation, classmates calling for gossip, and distant relatives who used to look down on me calling to offer warm congratulations. I ignored them all and turned off my phone. The only call I took was from Sophia. The moment I picked up, her voice came through, urgent and incredulous. "Nathan, is the news true? You married Isabella Blake?" "Yes." My answer was one word, as calm as if I were talking about someone else. Silence on the other end. After a long while, Sophia's voice returned, but this time laced with accusation. "Why didn't you say you loved me? It's been a few days, and you're married to another woman. Nathan, is this how you loved me? You're doing this to get back at me, aren't you? Revenge." I suddenly found it funny. "Why do you get to question me, Sophia?" I said coldly. "The moment you chose to leave with Damien in front of everyone, we were over. Who I marry and how I marry has nothing to do with you. How could you treat me like this?" Her voice took on a sobbing tone. "Were our 5 years of feelings fake? Do you not care at all?" Care? It was as if I'd heard the world's biggest joke. The person who trampled our 5 years of feelings into the dirt and turned to throw herself into another man's arms was you, not me. Why do you get to talk to me about feelings now? She seemed choked into silence. "Also, please don't call me again. My wife wouldn't be happy." I hung up immediately. My so-called wife was sitting opposite me, elegantly eating breakfast while reading the news on her tablet, her face showing no ripples of emotion, as if the protagonist in the news wasn't her. "Not bad," she said, putting down the tablet and wiping her mouth with a napkin, a faint compliment. "The reaction from the board must be intense, right?" I asked. "They've exploded," Isabella said, her tone neutral. "Those old fossils started attacking in the company chat early this morning, saying my decision to marry privately was irresponsible to the company. The Ashford Group has also publicly issued a statement terminating all cooperation negotiations with us. So next. Tonight, the Blake family is hosting a dinner. Consider it your welcome party and also a trap. Isabella looked at me, her eyes carrying a sharp scrutiny for the first time. The major shareholders who oppose me will all be there. They will try every method to make things difficult for you, to make you look like a fool, to prove my choice was wrong. Tonight is your debut as my husband, and also your first battle. She paused. Can you handle it? I met her gaze without flinching. Ms. Blake, since you chose me, you should trust your judgment. I'll fight this battle with you. A glint of imperceptible approval flashed in Isabella's eyes. She stood up and adjusted her collar. Good. The driver will pick you up at 7 tonight. Don't embarrass me. With that, she walked out in her heels. I knew the real test was just beginning. The Blake family dinner was held at their old estate, a historic mansion in upstate New York, with manicured gardens and an air of understated old money. Following Isabella's instructions, I changed into the custom suit her assistant prepared and arrived on time. The moment I stepped into the banquet hall, every eye locked onto me. There was curiosity, scrutiny, but mostly undisguised contempt and hostility. An elderly man with white hair but a vigorous spirit sat at the head of the table, leaning on a cane. He was Harold Pemberton, the second largest shareholder and the leader of the opposition. The people sitting around him were all veteran figures of Blake Holdings. Isabella stood by his side, her expression cold. When she saw me enter, she gave a slight nod. I walked up and greeted the elder politely. Mr. Pemberton, good evening. Pemberton didn't even lift his eyelids, just grunted in response. A heavy-set, middle-aged man next to him, Director Crawford, spoke up in a sarcastic tone. Oh, so this is the son-in-law Ms. Blake carefully selected. Mr. Rivers, right? We've heard so much about you. To go from a failed proposal to hitching a ride with our CEO so quickly, I admire your tactics. As his voice fell, a wave of suppressed snickering rippled through the room. It was naked humiliation. They wanted to see me embarrassed, angry, losing my composure. But I didn't. I just smiled faintly, looked at Director Crawford, and spoke calmly. You flatter me, Director Crawford. Matters of the heart are subjective. Some people like leftover food past its expiration date, thinking it's a delicacy. As for me, I prefer what is fresh and valuable. After all, being with someone worthy allows one to maximize their own value. Don't you agree? My words had a double meaning. I insulted Sophia and implicitly struck back at their short-sightedness. Crawford's face turned the color of raw liver. At the head of the table, Harold Pemberton finally opened his eyes slowly. His clouded gaze landed on me. Young man, you talk big. What makes you think you're qualified to stand here next to Isabella? Here it comes, the main topic. I looked him straight in the eye, neither humble nor arrogant. Because I can give Miss Blake what she needs. Oh. Pemberton raised an eyebrow with interest. Tell me, what can you give her? Money. The Blake family has plenty. Power. What power can a rootless architect have? What I can bring is the future. My voice wasn't loud, but in the quiet hall, it carried weight. Everyone here is a veteran of Blake Holdings. You know better than I that while the group is massive, its core industries remain traditional manufacturing and real estate. Both industries have hit a ceiling in this era. I paused, letting my words sink in. I've noticed that the recent projects of Blake Estates have received mediocre responses. The designs are dated and lack highlights, completely failing to match the brand's high-end positioning. This is one of the dilemmas Blake Holdings faces: brand aging and a lack of innovation. My words caused a slight change in everyone's expressions. These were core company issues, things an outsider shouldn't know. I knew because yesterday afternoon, I saw a quarterly analysis report Isabella had left on her desk. I only glanced at it, but with my years of professional experience, I spotted the crux of the problem. And I paused, my tone filled with confidence. I can inject entirely new design concepts into Blake Estates and create landmark buildings that will lead the trends of the next decade. I can help Blake Holdings upgrade and transform its brand image. When I finished, the hall was silent. Pemberton and the directors looked at me with uncertainty. They clearly hadn't expected this trophy husband to see the company's issues so clearly. Even Isabella, who hadn't spoken, had a flash of surprise in her eyes. Talk is cheap, Crawford was the first to jump out. Anyone can make empty promises. You say you can, so you can. Why should we believe you? Because of this. I took a thumb drive from my pocket and handed it to the assistant nearby. This is a conceptual design plan I created overnight for the idle plot of land in the East District. I call this project Apex. I believe it is enough to prove my ability. The assistant plugged the drive into the computer, and a set of stunning blueprints appeared on the projection screen. It was a hyper-modern architectural complex combining ecology, technology, and art. The boldness of the concept and the shock of the visuals made everyone gasp. Even the experienced Harold Pemberton leaned forward, awe in his eyes. You really did this in one night?" he asked in disbelief. "Yes," I nodded. "This is just a preliminary concept. If you give me a week, I can present a more perfected plan." Pemberton fell silent. He looked at me, his gaze complex. After a long time, he leaned back and sighed. The younger generation is formidable. He turned to Isabella, his tone much softer. "Isabella, your eye is indeed sharper than us old folks. You chose the right person." In that moment, I clearly saw shock and unwillingness written on Crawford's face. And Isabella, she looked at me, and for the first time, those icy eyes held a ripple of genuine appreciation mixed with curiosity. I won the first battle. I won the preliminary approval of these old foxes, and I won a new look from my nominal wife, Isabella. And this was just the beginning. After the family dinner, my status in the Blake household changed subtly. The directors who were hostile restrained themselves, and Isabella truly began to view me as a partner. She kept her promise with lightning speed. She passed a resolution through the board to establish an independent design studio for me and handed full responsibility for the East District project to me. My studio was on the 35th floor of the Blake Tower, directly facing Isabella's CEO office. We truly became people who saw each other constantly. The intersection of work increased our communication. I discovered that beneath the Ice Queen exterior, Isabella wasn't as unapproachable as she seemed. She was intensely focused on work and strict but fair. She would argue with me until red in the face over a detail in my blueprints, but she would also have her assistant send hot coffee and late-night snacks when I pulled all-nighters. Our relationship, through day-to-day interaction, evolved from a cold contract into genuine camaraderie. Meanwhile, the Apex project was proceeding methodically. Because of its avant-garde design and massive commercial potential, it quickly attracted the attention of the entire industry. Naturally, it also attracted Damien Ashford's attention. At an industry summit, I crossed paths with him and Sophia. At the time, I was on stage as a special guest, sharing my design philosophy. They were sitting in the front row. Damien's face was dark enough to drip water, and Sophia, she looked at me, high-spirited on stage, with eyes as tangled as a mess of yarn, shocked, jealousy, and a trace of regret. I could clearly read it. From a laughingstock to the Blake son-in-law, then to a star architect, it took me only a month. She probably never imagined that the men she scorned as settling for ordinary would unleash such energy after leaving her. At the cocktail party after the summit, she sought me out. "Nathan, can we talk?" She held a wine glass, speaking cautiously. Gone was the decisiveness. Instead, she looked pitiful. "We have nothing to talk about," my tone was distant. "I know you're still mad at me." She bit her lip, her eyes reddening. "I was wrong that day. I apologize, but I had my reasons." "Reasons?" I sneered. "Your reason was that you couldn't wait to jump into someone else's bed." "No," she explained hurriedly. "Damien, he promised to help my family. You know my family's company has been struggling for 2 years. The capital chain was about to break. Damien said if I was with him, the Ashford family would help us weather the storm. So that was it. For money, for family interests, she could betray 5 years of love with a clear conscience. How laughable. So you treated me as a stepping stone for your wealthy life." I looked at her, zero warmth in my eyes. No. I have feelings for you." She waved her hands in panic. Enough. I didn't want to hear her excuses. "Sophia, put away the pity act. When you made your choice, you should have expected today. You chose the road, walk it yourself. Don't bother me again. I finished and turned to leave. Nathan Rivers, she suddenly shouted behind me, don't get cocky too early. Do you really think Isabella Blake loves you? She's just using you as a tool to fight the Ashford family. When she's done using you, you'll be kicked to the curb just the same. You and I are exactly the same kind of people. I paused but didn't look back. You and I were never the same kind of people. I dropped the sentence lightly and walked straight to Isabella, who was standing nearby. She was surrounded by business tycoons. Seeing me approach, she naturally took my arm and introduced me to the group. Gentlemen, let me introduce my husband, Nathan Rivers. At that moment, the look she gave me held a trace of imperceptible tenderness. In the distance, Sophia watched our intimacy, her face pale. The glass in her hand slipped, crash, shattering on the floor. I knew I had won this round, but I also knew Sophia's vicious curse wasn't baseless. My marriage to Isabella was fundamentally a transaction. The fate of a tool is to be used and discarded. That thought was like a thorn, quietly embedding itself in my heart. The Apex project was going smoothly, entering the final preparations before groundbreaking. The entire city was anticipating the rise of this future landmark. Blake Holdings' stock price climbed steadily, and Isabella's position was more secure than ever. Everything seemed to be going well. However, the thorn in my heart grew sharper. Isabella and I were a loving couple in public, perfectly in sync. Back in that empty penthouse, we reverted to familiar strangers. She slept in the master bedroom, I slept in the guest room. Aside from work, we barely spoke. Our marriage was like the apex, beautiful on the outside, but the foundation was hollow. I began to feel an inexplicable irritability. This feeling peaked when I noticed some clues. I found that Isabella often stayed in her study alone until late at night. A few times when I got up for water, I saw light leaking from under her door and heard muffled, painful sobbing. The Ice Queen, always strong in public, was crying secretly. What was she worried about? The company, or this fake marriage? Even more unsettling, I discovered a member of my core design team acting suspiciously. Derek Walsh, a talented young man I had personally recruited, I noticed he was taking mysterious calls and hanging up immediately when he saw me. Once, I caught him sneaking around, copying core data from my computer. I didn't expose him on the spot. I kept my guard up. My gut told me things weren't simple. Damien Ashford lost to me on the apex, and given his personality, he wouldn't let it go. He was definitely brewing something. To find the truth, I used Marcus's connections to hire a private investigator to check Derek, and also to check the current status of Damien and Sophia. The results came back quickly, and they chilled me to the bone. The detective got photos of Derek meeting Damien's assistant in a coffee shop. In the photo, the assistant handed Derek a thick envelope. There was no doubt, Derek had been bought. He was stealing my designs. The report on Sophia struck me like a bolt of lightning. It showed that Sophia's family business hadn't received aid from the Ashford family, as she claimed. On the contrary, after she reunited with Damien, her company was acquired by Ashford Enterprises in a hostile takeover at a rock-bottom price. Her father couldn't take the blow and suffered a stroke. He was currently in a hospital, his condition critical. As for Sophia herself, after Damien grew tired of her, she was discarded like trash. Her reputation was ruined, and she had nothing. I looked at the photo in the report. Sophia looked haggard, her eyes empty, void of her former brilliance. I felt no sympathy, only creeping horror. Damien Ashford, this man's methods were more vicious and shameless than I imagined. He didn't just play with her feelings. He swallowed her family's assets and pushed her into an abyss. So, buying off Derek to steal my data, what was that for? Just revenge? No, it couldn't be that simple. A massive conspiracy was taking shape in the shadows. I had to figure out his real objective. Just then, I received a call from Marcus. His voice was frantic, panicking like never before. Nathan, it's bad. Something happened to my sister. What happened to her? My heart seized. She collapsed in the office. She was just rushed to the hospital. The doctor says, Marcus's voice cracked, sobbing. The doctor says it's stage 4 gastric cancer. Stage 4 cancer. The words exploded in my brain. I rushed to the hospital. Outside the operating room, Marcus was crouched on the floor like a helpless child, holding his head and crying. Seeing me, he jumped up and grabbed my arm, eyes bloodshot. "Nathan, what do we do? What about Isabella?" My mind went blank. I couldn't connect terminal cancer with the calm, powerful Isabella Blake. No wonder she locked herself in the study. No wonder I heard her crying. She knew. She had kept it from everyone, bearing it alone in silence. I suddenly understood why she was in such a rush to find a husband. Why was she desperate to stabilize her position? Why did she hand such a critical project like the Apex to me? She wasn't using me. She was entrusting me with her legacy. She was looking for a trustworthy heir to protect her brother and the business empire she built. And I was the one she chose. A massive wave of grief and shock drowned me. I always thought we were just a cold transaction. I had been guarding myself, calculating, afraid of being discarded. But I was wrong, dead wrong. This woman shouldered all the storms with her slender frame, yet left her final tenderness and trust to me, a husband she had only known for a few months. The operating light finally turned off. The doctor walked out, removing his mask, looking exhausted. The surgery was successful. The primary tumor was removed. However, the patient's condition is not optimistic. It is terminal. How much time she has left depends on her willpower. Isabella was wheeled out, her face as pale as paper, lying quietly on the bed, stripped of her dominance and edge. She looked so fragile it hurt to watch. I held her cold hand, my heart in turmoil. From this moment on, I swore this wasn't about revenge anymore. I was going to protect everything for her. I told Marcus to stay at the hospital while I returned to the company. A bold and risky plan had formed in my mind. Damien Ashford painstakingly bought off Derek to steal my data, not just to copy it. With his greed, he wanted more. He wanted to destroy the Apex, destroy me, and Blake Holdings. Fine. I would play along and give him a gift he would never forget. I went back to the studio, pretending to know nothing, keeping Derek on the core team. But secretly, I buried a Trojan horse in the core design database on my computer, a trap deep enough to doom him and Ashford Enterprises forever. The news of Isabella's illness couldn't be contained. Soon, it spread throughout New York. Blake Holdings' stock plummeted. The board members I had suppressed began to stir again. Ashford Enterprises seized the opportunity, publicly announcing the launch of a new city landmark project, the Helix, to challenge the Apex. They also high-profilely announced that the lead architect of the Helix was none other than Sophia Monroe. The public was in an uproar. Everyone was waiting to see how Sophia and I, former lovers now rivals, would compete. Everyone was watching to see how Blake Holdings, having lost its backbone, would be crushed by Ashford. Even Marcus asked me anxiously, "Nathan, what do we do? With Isabella down and the company in panic, and Damien coming at us, can we hold on?" I patted his shoulder, my eyes steady. "Relax. As long as I'm here, the sky won't fall." My calm gave him some comfort, but I knew the decisive moment had arrived. The Ashford launch event was set for a month later. They claimed the design of the Helix would be subversive, transcending the era. I laughed coldly. Subversive, of course, because that design was stolen from me, except it was the poison version I had modified. During that month, on the surface, I continued with Plan B for the Apex, a seemingly excellent but much more conservative alternative. In the shadows, I contacted a top IP legal team and an authoritative structural safety assessment agency. I locked down the timestamps and evidence for my original genuine Apex drafts, sketches, and data. Simultaneously, I had the detective continue gathering evidence of the transaction between Derek and the Ashford camp. A dragnet was quietly spreading, waiting for Damien and Sophia to step right in. 1 month later, the global launch for Ashford Enterprises Helix was held as scheduled at the Javits Center. It was a grand spectacle. Damien stood on stage in a bespoke suit, basking in the camera flashes. Sophia, wearing a magnificent gown and exquisite makeup, stood beside him as lead architect. She seemed to have regained her former glory, but beneath that shine, I could see the hollowness and numbness in her eyes. She was just a prettier puppet Damien pushed to the front to humiliate me. The presentation began. The massive screen played the animation for the helix. When that familiar, practically identical architectural model appeared, the audience gasped. The stunning lines, the bold structure, the futuristic concept, it was unmistakably my apex. The venue exploded. Plagiarism. That's blatant plagiarism. My God, it's almost exactly the same as Rivers's design. All eyes turned to me in the front row of the VIP section. The cameras swung my way. They wanted to see my reaction, anger, loss of control. But I just sat there quietly, a faint smile on my face. On stage, seeing my reaction, a glint of sadistic pleasure flashed in Damien's eyes. This was what he wanted everyone to see that I, Nathan Rivers, was a fraud. He wanted everyone to believe that Blake's project was the copy. He picked up a microphone, addressing the room loudly. I know everyone has questions. You might think the helix looks similar to Blake's project, but I want to say that great minds think alike. Furthermore, his tone sharpened, truly great design must not only be visible but must withstand testing. Our design has passed the most authoritative international structural safety assessments. Whereas, to my knowledge, Blake's Apex has failed safety audits due to fatal structural flaws and is on the verge of being scrapped. His words were a bombshell. Fatal structural flaws, scrap project, if true, this was a catastrophe for the teetering Blake Holdings. Everyone stared at me again, this time with suspicion and pity. Sophia looked at me from the stage, her expression complex, mixed with vindication and reluctance. Damien grinned from ear to ear. He thought he had won. However, he didn't know that this was the start of the real show. Mr. Ashford makes a good point. I finally stood up, taking a microphone. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly. Great design must withstand testing. I looked at Damien and smiled. But I'm curious, which authoritative international agency conducted your assessment? Care to introduce them? Damien's face stiffened. He hadn't expected the question. His assessment was faked. That involves commercial secrets. No comment, he stalled. Is that so? My smile widened. That's fine. If he won't say it, I will. I snapped my fingers. The doors burst open. A group of uniformed officers, accompanied by 2 lawyers, marched in. The leader flashed his badge. NYPD Financial Crimes Task Force. Damien Ashford, Sophia Monroe, we suspect you of corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, and fraud. Please come with us. The hall fell deathly silent. Everyone was stunned. Damien's face lost all color. You, on what grounds? This is slander, he shouted, his voice shaking. On these grounds. My lawyer handed a thick stack of files to the police. This is the complete creation record of my client, Mr. Rivers's Apex project, from concept sketches to final drafts, all with notarized timestamps. This is the evidence of Ashford Enterprises bribing Derek Walsh to steal trade secrets, including bank transfers and surveillance footage. And most importantly, my lawyer held up the final document for the press. This is a structural safety risk assessment report from the National Institute of Building Sciences. The helix design contains critical load-bearing calculation errors that could lead to catastrophic collapse. The design you stole, Mr. Ashford, was a modified trap version I deliberately fed to your spy. The hall erupted into chaos. Reporters swarmed like sharks smelling blood. Cameras flashed like lightning. Damien's face turned from white to green, his lips trembling, unable to form words. Sophia stood frozen on stage, her face drained of all color. She looked at me with eyes filled with terror and disbelief. She finally understood. From the moment Damien decided to steal my design, he had walked into a trap I meticulously laid. No, no, this is impossible, Damien finally found his voice, roaring hysterically. You're framing me. I'll sue you for defamation. Sue me. I walked slowly toward the stage, my voice cold and clear. Mr. Ashford, the law will give you plenty of opportunities to defend yourself. Corporate espionage carries a minimum sentence of 5 years. Fraud involving amounts over 10 million carry 7 to 15 years. With your Helix project's announced investment exceeding 50 million, I'm curious, how many years will you get? Damien's legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the stage. The officers moved forward and cuffed him. Sophia tried to back away but was also restrained. Nathan, Nathan please, she screamed desperately. I didn't know. I didn't know he stole your design. Please, help me explain to the police. I looked at her coldly. Help you? Sophia, when you chose to stand on that stage and present my stolen work as your own, you became an accomplice. The law doesn't care whether you knew or not. The officers escorted them both out. The launch event dissolved into complete pandemonium. Reporters surrounded me, thrusting microphones in my face. Mr. Rivers, did you plan this counterattack from the beginning? How did you discover the corporate espionage? What's the current status of the Apex project? I faced the cameras calmly. The truth will always come to light. Blake Holdings has always adhered to principles of integrity and innovation. The Apex project will proceed as scheduled with the genuine, structurally sound design. Thank you all. With that, I left the venue under the escort of security. Outside, Marcus was waiting in the car, his face flushed with excitement. Nathan, you were incredible. You completely destroyed them. I didn't respond. I just looked out the window at the city lights, my heart strangely calm. Revenge, I had achieved it. Damien and Sophia would pay the price for their betrayal and arrogance. But in this moment, I felt no joy, only emptiness. Because I knew the person I most wanted to share this victory with was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for her life. Let's go to the hospital, I said quietly. I want to see Isabella. When I arrived at the hospital, Isabella was awake. She sat propped against pillows, looking weak but with clarity in her eyes. Seeing me enter, a faint smile crossed her pale face. I heard the news, she said softly. You won beautifully. I walked to her bedside and sat down, holding her hand gently. We won. This is our victory. She shook her head slightly. No, Nathan. This is your victory. You proved your worth. You proved my choice was right. She paused, her breathing a bit labored. Thank you for everything you've done for Blake Holdings and for Marcus. Don't say that, my throat tightened. You're going to get better. We still have many projects to complete together. Isabella looked at me, her eyes holding complex emotions, gratitude, reluctance, and something deeper I couldn't quite identify. Nathan, I need to tell you something. Our contract still has 6 months remaining, but I want to give you your freedom early. What? I was stunned. You've done enough. More than enough, she said gently. The company is stable now. The board trusts you. Marcus has matured. You don't need to stay bound to a dying woman anymore. Don't say that, I gripped her hand tighter, my emotions surging. Isabella, you're not binding me. I suddenly stopped, realizing what I was about to say. In these months of living together, working together, fighting together, something had changed imperceptibly in my heart. This woman who was supposed to be just a contractual partner had become someone I genuinely cared about, someone I couldn't bear to lose. You what? Isabella asked softly, looking into my eyes. I want to stay, I said firmly. Not because of the contract, not because of revenge, but because I want to. Isabella, let me stay by your side. Let me face whatever comes next with you. Her eyes reddened, tears sliding down her pale cheeks. Nathan, you don't have to pity me. This isn't pity, I leaned closer, my voice earnest. These months, you've shown me what true strength and grace look like. You've given me a platform, a purpose, and a home. More than that, you've given me a reason to become a better man. Isabella Blake, I want to be your real husband, not just on paper. She stared at me, tears flowing freely now. After a long moment, she whispered, Are you sure? I might not have much time left. Then let me make whatever time you have left the happiest of your life, I said, my voice breaking. Let me do for you what you've done for me, give you something real. Isabella pulled me into an embrace, her frail body trembling with emotion. In that moment, the contractual marriage that began as a transaction transformed into something genuine and profound. The months that followed were the most meaningful of my life. I spent every spare moment with Isabella, working beside her when she felt strong enough, reading to her when she was weak, simply holding her hand when words weren't necessary. The Apex project broke ground to tremendous fanfare. Damien Ashford and Sophia Monroe were convicted of corporate espionage and fraud, receiving sentences of 8 and 5 years respectively. Ashford Enterprises' stock plummeted, and the family's empire began to crumble. But these victories felt distant now. My focus was on Isabella, on cherishing every moment we had together. Marcus watched our relationship deepen with bittersweet joy. "You really fell for her, didn't you?" he asked me one evening. "I did," I admitted. "She was never just a contract to me. I just didn't realize it until I almost lost her." Blake Holdings thrived under our joint leadership. The board, once hostile, became my strongest supporters. They saw what Isabella had seen from the beginning, that I was worthy of standing beside her. On a crisp autumn evening, 6 months after her diagnosis, Isabella and I stood on the terrace of our penthouse, looking out over the city. The Apex's steel framework rose in the distance, reaching toward the sky. "It's beautiful," she whispered, leaning against me. "You created something that will outlast all of us." "We created it together," I corrected her, wrapping my arms around her carefully. "Everything I built with you." She turned to face me, her eyes holding that same depth I'd seen on the day we first met, but now softened with love. "Nathan Rivers, marrying you was supposed to be a business decision. Instead, it became the best decision of my life." "Isabella Blake," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "thank you for seeing something in me when I couldn't see it in myself. Thank you for trusting me with your legacy. Thank you for teaching me that real strength comes from vulnerability, and real love comes from unexpected places." We stood there as the sun set over New York, two people who had found something real in the most unlikely circumstances. The revenge I'd sought felt like a lifetime ago, replaced by something far more valuable: genuine love, hard-won respect, and the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victories come not from defeating our enemies, but from opening our hearts to unexpected possibilities. Isabella lived for another year, defying every medical prediction. When she finally passed, peacefully in her sleep with me holding her hand, she left behind a legacy of strength, a thriving company, and a husband who would spend the rest of his life honoring her memory by living with the same courage and integrity she had shown him. The Apex was completed 2 years later, standing as a testament to what we had built together, not just a building, but a partnership that transcended contracts and circumstances, proving that sometimes the most profound love stories begin with the most unlikely arrangements.